This week, not threat intelligence. Oracle is giving up. Your employees won't hate you as much. The struggle is real in enterprise security, microsegmentation, analytics, risk intelligence, and more buzzwords. A new acronym and a new category. John and I will discuss developer security awareness training for the enterprise, and then I will discuss solutions, some completely free, that your enterprise can use for vulnerability tracking and reporting. All that and more on this episode of Enterprise Security Weekly. This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we talk security vendors and aren't afraid to name names. It's Enterprise Security Weekly. The teleprompter now has artificial intelligence, Doug, and updates itself. It's awesome. This week, and talk about them as it relates to enterprise security. You're going to do great.
I think that people think that you and I talk like every day at night. You know, It's like, hey, what are you doing? It's kind of a bit of an exhausting week. And I think that we noticed that a little bit in the stories for this week as well.
In order to deliver the maximum degree of privacy, personal data must be protected without action from an individual. In fact, this requirement is defined in the General Data Protection Regulation, also known as GDPR. What if you could reliably and efficiently build privacy into your information security programs by default? StealthBits Technologies provides solutions that allow data to be collected and used in a manner that achieves GDPR compliance. Privacy by design and by default is not just a GDPR requirement, it's the foundation of StealthBits Technologies. Visit stealthbits.com to learn more today. Are you worried about PCI compliance? Does your development team understand or care about security? Are you ready to face a breach of your customer's sensitive data? See the worst that can happen before it does. Black Hills Information Security can help you help management see the future. Email consulting@blackhillsinfosec.com to find out how a web application penetration test can mitigate the risk before you go live. Welcome to episode 58 of Enterprise Security Weekly. I'm your host, Paul Asadorian, reporting with my good friend John Strand on the Enterprise Security News. This is August 23rd, 2017. John, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me, Paul. I think we got an absolutely jam-packed fatty of a show today.
We do. We got a lot to talk about. First, I want all of our listeners to visit itpro.tv/enterprise security. Use the code ES30. Try it free for 7 days. Receive 30% off your monthly membership for the lifetime of your active subscription. Use the supervisor portal where your employer buys a subscription to itpro.tv, and your manager can help you assign training modules and help you manage your training, keep track of your progress so that you're getting trained up and advancing your career. itpro.tv/enterprise security. Also, we're doing an awesome webcast. Myself, Joff Thayer, Tim, and Kyle from Domain Tools talking about what is referenced here in our first story, in fact, domains and IP addresses. That's right. Some will call that threat intelligence. I would largely disagree. However, what I don't disagree with is how important it is to incorporate this into your security strategy. Learn how to do that at domaintools.com/security weekly. Sign up for our fabulous webinar. Alrighty, the Enterprise Security News, John. This is Beyond Feeds, a deep dive into threat intelligence sources. This was done in collaboration with SANS and our good bald friend Dave Shackelford. A quote from the article summarizing this activity was, "Straight away we saw something interesting. A very high proportion of organizations were already using threat intelligence to block malicious domains and IP addresses, with many also using it to add context to investigations or compromise assessments." I'm going to make a pretty bold statement and go on a limb and argue the point that this type of source is not threat intelligence, and here's why. First, the domain and/or IP is not really a threat. It is the source of a threat, but does not speak to the threat itself or give you any context. I'd also argue it's not really intelligence, but merely a reporting system based on scoring and observing behavior. Simply stating it's bad without some type of context is why it is not intelligence. Now, you may probably disagree with me, maybe agree with me, I'm not sure.
No, I actually agree quite a bit. And this gets into like 90% of the time that whenever we see cyber threat intelligence boiled down into an organization, it basically is a list of IP addresses that are bad and who has the most up-to-date list of IP addresses that's bad. And then you start getting into that 10% where people can actually ingest Yara rules and do searches across their entire environment for possible attacks that are out there. And that's probably where I think threat intelligence pretty much garbage. At that point. But whenever we actually start breaking it down, and I think we've talked about this a number of weeks so far, and I think we'll keep on this theme. If you look at MITRE, what they did with the attack framework and specifically the techniques matrix, with the techniques matrix saying these are the techniques that bad guys use, I think that has a lot of value. Even though that may not be a specific threat, I think trying to get attribution down to a specific panda type or shadow type threat actor is problematic at best. But I think knowing their techniques is absolutely the type of threat intelligence that organizations need to have, rather than trying to boil it down to specific threat actors coming after them. Or one of the things that I hate is where people call us up and they say, look, we want to know exactly what type of threat actors are going to be attacking our organization and what tactics do they employ. That's a garbage question. Who cares who's coming after you? They're probably going to use the same tactics everybody else is using. And that's why that threat kind of activity matrix, the techniques that they use, is so key, because it's not trying to find 1,000 different actors. It's basically boiling it down to 100 or so specific techniques that you can detect.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think if we could say, I think it would qualify as threat intelligence in my definition if we could say, from these domains or IP addresses, these type of attack vectors or what's happening from them, that would be more valuable. Now, I don't want to disqualify the value of just bad domains and IP addresses. I just don't think it's threat intelligence. I think it's something you should do, and I think you can do it at a very low cost, and I think the more money you put into it, the somewhat better service you will get. In other words, we've talked about Domain Tools Iris, for example, who's a sponsor of the show, but other vendors have provided better intelligence to say, look, the bad guys have registered these domains. The same bad guys also registered these other domains. You should go block those too. That's tremendously valuable. Again, I just don't classify that as threat intelligence. That's just something you should do, and I think is table stakes to help you weed out really easy stuff that you can do to secure your network.
So we call that security.
Yeah,
basically.
pretty much. Yeah, it's security, right? I mean, we use it. We covered it, and we're going to be talking about it in the webcast, right? Well, we've done open source tools and used open source technology. I put up two very low cost DNS servers in the cloud. They're running Pi-hole software, which automates and uses open source feeds. And yeah, it has its downfalls, which I can get into, but it works. It works, and it applies that segment of our security architecture program very cheaply and very easily. So there you have it.
Yes, absolutely.
All righty. Oracle is getting rid of Java Enterprise. Well, they're not. I guess they're not getting. Well, are they getting? They're giving it to the open source. They're giving it to the open source community. Is what's happening. That's what's happening.
I really wonder, honestly, are we going to be we've been trying to get rid of Java for, 10 years now in most organizations. Is this finally the end of it, or is this going to serve as a resurgence? And I don't know which way it's going to go. I could see the open source community taking it and making it awesome and running with it, or I could just see everybody saying, no, it's kind of like a mosh pit where somebody's diving into the crowd and everybody just kind of moves out of the way and you hit the floor. So it all depends on
Java on the client side, not only should it die, but it never should have been a thing, first of all. Java on the server side is great. And a lot of enterprises, of course, as you probably have noticed, John, doing assessments and things, Java on the enterprise, on the server side, is an awesome thing. And a lot of enterprises use it, and that's how they have built their enterprise applications.
Wow. And God, look at legacy applications. This is not going away anytime really soon.
But now,
I'd like to see it go.
Now it's in the hands of likely what is going to happen. The Apache Foundation is going to take over it. And what is that? Does that mean anything to organizations that still run Java? Is it more risky now? Does it light a fire underneath them to move to some different technology? Maybe they don't need to move to some other different technology. But my concern is the level of support they're going to get for the enterprise edition of Java when it's in the hands of an open source that is not going to really push it in the enterprise, right? Like Oracle got rid of all of their evangelists for Java Enterprise Edition.
That was a few years ago.
Yeah,
wasn't
so
it?
like they've been killing it slowly over time, and just really want to get rid of it. I'm not sure if that how big of a deal that is for a lot of enterprises. If they relied on commercial support, probably not. But now are patches going to be delayed, or are the security vulnerabilities going to be handled or even discovered? What's the code-based maintenance going to look like moving forward? Is it going to be better, worse, or indifferent? I'm not sure. It's something to consider if your organization is using the Enterprise Edition of Java.
And let's also, talking about who's going to take responsibility. You talked about the Apache. That's Apache Foundation. That's where most people want it to go. Mm-hmm. And we tend to see like very, very large open source projects are pretty okay. I mean, they have some issues, but they actually get a lot of scrutiny. That would be like Apache. That would be like Bind. That would be like Linux, Apache, Bind, all of those things that we see all the time. Is this one going to get that type of big groundswell of support? And by community support, it doesn't necessarily mean a bunch of developers that are their hobbyists that are putting in their time to make Java better, but it's going to need big corporate support. And I think that that's where this is going to be interesting. Is Java still going to be contributed by Oracle? Are we going to see other organizations and other large corporations continuing to contribute funds to keep this language moving forward, or at least maintaining it? If we see a bunch of large players that just don't actually step up to help fund this open source project of Java, it's going to wither on the vine and it's going to die probably a lot faster than what we'd expect.
Yep. How to secure your mobile devices without making your employees hate you. Now, I just want, and this is from Cylance, and it's not a bad article. I just think that they may not hate you, but certainly they're going to hate having their devices managed if they bring their own personal devices and use them for work purposes. When you do that, typically there's some kind of management, whether that's a mobile iron or whatever's built into. Google actually has some management tools on that front that's built into the platform. I just think that your alternative is user education, as is presented in the article, and that's just not enough, especially on Android.
Well, and this entire article, it's kind of weird for me to say this, but I agree with this article quite a bit. Mm-hmm. And it's really a step for basically Cylance to drive home the idea that they have a home edition that is available for their product, which honestly, is something, it is absolutely something that should have been coming a long time, even though they say it's enterprise level antivirus specifically for home users. I think it's great. And I think that this is going to make Cylance better, because the more data that they have, the better their product is actually going to be. And to be honest, I would like to see how Cylance works on like my aunts and my uncles and a bunch of people that are just doing general surfing. I think that would be very, very cool. I still can't see exactly how much it costs from their website. I have to get a demo for the home version, which is weird.
It's weird.
Oh, well.
So this one's not really enterprise related, but it's creepy. GeoGuard, the Vancouver-based geolocation piracy prevention experts, and Skyhook, the world's behavioral location intelligence company, have announced a collaboration to provide the content industry with the first solution that ensures viewers are verifiably watching films and TV at home.
Yes.
Boo. Anyway.
Well, this is kind of like whenever we travel we've talked about this, right? You have like your HBO Go account, you have your Netflix account, and you travel over to, let's say, BrewCon, right? And you try to watch your shows. It's like, you're not in the United States. That sucks. But this is going to be it's going to be interesting. There's going to be a lot of money going into this, because hasn't HBO pretty much lost control of all of Game of Thrones now?
Yeah, and that's been in the headlines. There have been numerous entertainment companies that lost content.
I think ABC, I think Netflix, they lost Orange is the New Black.
Yep.
There's just been tons of scenarios. So you can literally see like VC capital funding companies just throwing money at these corporations just because it's such a big deal.
Yeah. And, there's probably a huge push in that industry now to protect intellectual property more so than they were doing before, given the number of attacks that have targeted that industry. So organizations struggle with cybersecurity. We know that. So a Gigamon study found that nearly 2/3 of companies surveyed don't have visibility into all aspects of their IT infrastructure, and almost half of respondents who don't have visibility into their network do not possess information on what is being encrypted.
And the other third is lying. So
this is true. It's true. It's interesting. When we're going to talk about another vendor, response software that just came out of stealth mode. I actually got the opportunity to speak to Awake Security that are actually addressing this very problem. And that was what I was talking about yesterday on the phone. I was like, the problem is that we define and say, well, you should know your network. You should know where all your assets are, what software is installed on everything, and what protocols are used to communicate. But no one really knows all that. I mean, we try, but we need perhaps a new category of solutions that specifically are addressing this visibility issue. I think a lot of vendors have flirted with it, have attempted to do it. I don't think we really have a good set of solutions in this area, John.
No, we don't. I think some of the closest things that we have in this area would be passive vulnerability assessment scanning, basically hoping that these products connect out of your environment to get some visibility into what you don't have visibility in. And Bro also has the ability of actually doing user agent string analysis and collecting information about the clients that are connecting outbound. But that's about it. So I'd be really interested to hear about this new company that just came out of stealth mode as far as what they have in the works to help deal with these problems as well.
Wow, does Skype for Business really suck? Have you ever used Skype for Business, John?
It's horrible.
It's terrible.
I've never, it's so bad. You remember whenever Metasploit came out with Metasploit Pro, or Rapid7 came out with Metasploit Pro years ago. And it was like, oh, it's Metasploit Pro with like, it was really not as fully featured or functional as the standard Metasploit. That's kind of the way I feel about this. And by the way, Rapid7 is Metasploit Pro is a lot better now than it was, but that's how I feel about this. Regular Skype seems to work great, but the Skype for Enterprise it just doesn't work. It's 90% of the time I end up having to do call bridge.
Yeah, and we have the conference, professional conference version of Skype TX, and that has its limitations, such as not being able to share your screen, which is just
I know
like, they just got features for like seemingly no reason. Anyway,
yeah.
Cisco's Spark update, which is their collaboration platform, adds the ability to encrypt all communications occurring across the platform alongside a variety of new compliance controls. So anything is better than Skype for Business is really kind of where I was going with that.
Yep, but I still don't know about the Cisco Spark being any better. That's
okay.
That would be. I would have to drink a lot before I'd actually say that, I think.
Gotcha. Illumio today added a set of virtualization and discovery tools to an Illumio adaptive security platform for microsegmenting traffic. This is like a newish buzzword that we're seeing. So it's microsegmenting traffic in the data center that makes it possible to identify dependencies in an IT environment and then generate the appropriate management or IT security policy. Interesting concept. They're dreaming big, John. Get this. The basic idea is that by controlling the flow of east-west traffic inside the data center, IT organizations can provide higher levels of security by potentially limiting the damage any malware infestation can cause, while also improving application performance, making the world a better place. That's a big dream. That's basically saying you've got this large, complex network. Let's microsegment everything down to its smallest possible denominator. That way we can more easily control it. However, you just created a lot more management nightmare by microsegmenting. I mean, people struggle with regular segmenting, let alone microsegmenting.
And this is something that's new, and I hate to just automatically gripe and seem like a curmudgeon and be like, it's crap. But I can just see someone trying to pitch this to a network administrator, and they're like, we're going to implement this product across the entire environment. It's going to automatically do microsegmentation. You just see the network admin's like, oh, just 1 minute. Just don't mind the shotgun here. Because, there's lots of segmentation that can be done, but it's also something that needs to be well thought out insofar as like where your data is actually going, why does it go there, how is it being transferred? Because under the best of circumstances, you still have business processes shut down. So the biggest question, and it'd be awesome to get these guys on. Chris is at this company. It'd be really cool to talk about what it is they're doing and how they do it. But at the same time, it's one of those things you're just like, oh boy, this sounds like it's going to get someone fired at some companies.
One Identity debuts analytics and risk intelligence. This is the buzzword bingo. One Identity announced in his official debut of new Starling Identity Analytics and Risk Management Service, providing organizations with cloud-delivered security and risk analysis capabilities. I have no idea.
So it's basically,
what does that mean? I don't get it.
So no, Paul, it's easy. It's IARI as a SaaS platform that actually brings EBA into your overall security platform for your security support structure. But the biggest thing is that IARA platform that is really next gen.
Next gen.
This is horrible. I don't even know what the hell they're doing. If I have to parse this, like, look, I don't want to sound too egotistical, but Paul, at this point in our careers, if we read something like this and it's like, I don't have a freaking clue what they just said, that's bad.
That's bad.
Am I wrong, or are we just like old and curmudgeon-y and we're becoming Jack?
The opening sentences for many of these announcements tend to just be filled with buzzwords and really don't say anything. I mean, it doesn't even get close to. They could have a friggin' awesome product. Like One Identity could be rock stars, and
amazing.
I hope that they are. I really do hope that they are an amazing company, but I don't get that from reading. Now we're going to get email, but it's fine. If you have an awesome solution, please highlight it. Let's highlight it.
Come on the show.
Yes.
Let's talk about it. But I like reading the quotes, and just the quotes alone in these articles, and seeing what kind of like alarms go off. So like right here, there's a small piece of code that an organization downloads and installed on premises. And then we manage that code through the cloud, and it collects information that we care about. And the only thing that goes through my head is, like a botnet.
You're like an agent. Yeah.
No, we're not looking at users. We're looking at the underlying access. What the hell does that mean? We're looking at risk. Paul, we're looking at risk at rest versus risk in motion.
Oh,
What?
What? I think they use the term risk and they don't really understand what that means.
I know. I think that there's someone really smart at the heart of this, and they had a really good idea. And it's been one of those games of telephone where it's been said so many times that by the time it got to the marketing director, she's like, "Yeah, we gotta throw some sass in that. Hey, let's make up a new acronym. How about Identity Analytics and Risk Intelligence? Trademark it."
What about Carta? I think we need to talk about Carta.
Oh my God!
This is Carta. It's Carta.
This changes everything.
It does. It's a game changer, a complete game changer in enterprise security.
A fire is coming. This is it, Paul. We've been getting it wrong. We haven't had Carta.
And apparently the headline is Gartner sets fire to all the cyber things. That's what.
When are we going to finally start ignoring Gartner? Are we at the point where we can just flat out ignore them? Because we were just talking about IONS. I have a ton of IONS calls where I'm like, yeah, what Gartner says over here is total crap. And they're like, but it's Gartner and it's shiny. And I'm like, well, I actually do this for a living, and Gartner's full of crap. So what the hell is this? Are they just starting up? Are they trying to create a whole new technology sector? It's just so frustrating.
Well, Gartner's the king of. So we're going to do a segment on this, I think, on Startup Security Weekly about category creation, and we see a lot of new categories being created in security. One of the premises is if you've got a great idea, it doesn't fit into an existing product category, you, the developer of that technology or product, go create that category. And you don't let anyone else define it, which means you get to define everything in your category, which is what you want. You don't want someone else, such as Gartner, defining the category, because they're going to put all kinds of rules and controls and guidelines around that category that might not fit your product. That's bad. You want to be the category creator. And here, Gartner wants us to go beyond adaptive, whatever that means. And
we got to get away from adaptive and agile. Because agile's been overused too.
So they've got a new word, CARTA, which stands for Continuous Adaptive Risk and Trust Assessment. I don't know what that means either.
Dude, it's all about managing risk, building trust, embracing change by becoming adaptive everywhere. Like, seriously, that came out of someone's mouth, and then someone recorded it and put quotes around it.
So we talked about Respond software It's an analyst platform, 12 million in Series A funding. It's very similar to the problem we were talking about before. They help solve the IT security staffing challenge with technology that can identify and escalate potential security threat alerts. Essentially, what I'm seeing emerge is a new category, right? And wake security and response software seems similar. I don't know if they do exactly the same thing. I apologize to both. If you are solving the problem in a different way, that's totally fine. But one of the problems, as I've seen it, is and John, you and I have talked about this a lot. We see an alert. We see an indicator of compromise. It could even be correlated data that says, like, this is something bad, and it goes back to an IP address in your environment. Now, there's other things that it could tie back to, but it ties back to an IP. How many times in your career, if you, John, or those listening and watching, have you done the security analysis for an organization, you look at that IP address and you go, what is that? What is it? What does it do? Who owns it? And where is it? How many times like every time, right? That's the first question you ask. You're like, what is that? And that's a loaded question, right? What does it normally do versus what it's maybe doing that's malicious? Where is it in the network? What protocols does it normally talk? This new category is helping answer that question, that I can go to some other kind of analytics platform and it tells me, hey, this thing is likely owned by this user and usually talks to these systems on these protocols and has this operating system and has this screen resolution. It gives you all this wonderful data that as an analyst, you're like, oh, so that's totally fine, or oh, shit, like sound the alarm, that's bad. And that's kind of one of the new things I'm seeing emerge. And I like this, John. I like this concept a lot.
I like the idea, but I think it's interesting how many products are spun off of legacy ArcSight people.
Yes.
Like if you look at the Exabeam crowd, right? Exabeam, they clearly were working at ArcSight, and they were like, hey, we could do this behavioral analytics stuff, and it would be awesome. And somewhere along the line, I guess ArcSight was like, no, we're not interested. Right. So they went off and they started their own company. And if you're looking at this, Armstead used to work at ArcSight. And, he's like, working at ArcSight gave me a lot of experience working with security operations centers. And basically what this boils down to is he could see gaps in the way that traditional SIM and analysis was actually being utilized, and out comes this product. So it makes you wonder. I agree with you. I think that this type of offshoot and kind of creating new areas is important, but I also find it very, very interesting how many of these people are spinning out of these legacy technologies that we've been talking about for a long time as being lacking. Like SIM is one of those things we've been talking about for 8 to 10 years as being kind of garbage. And a lot of people fought us, and they're like, oh, no, SIMs are great if you actually have a number of Perl scripts tied together. It's like, well, there's your problem. And now we have a bunch of companies that are taking – now you have two problems.
And then you wrote something in Perl. Now you have two problems.
I got Perl and set and awk and regular expressions. It's going to be great. And a CIO is just like, no. Yeah. So now we're starting to see these products spin out like Respond. We're starting to see user behavioral analytics at Rapid7. We're looking at Exabeam. And I finally get excited because I'm finally seeing people that are bringing an innovative approach to this problem of SIM. And I think it goes back to the Gartner article. I'm just waiting on Gartner to come and define it and then crap all over it and destroy and stifle innovation from that point on.
That tends to be their track record, yes.
Yeah.
The last story we wanted to talk about, John, was container security. A very, very, very nice article from Twistlock, I thought, about using containers.
This is 2 weeks in a row from Twistlock.
So one of my favorite parts of the article, and they basically carry through the theme of environment parity throughout this entire article, and really a lot of it's a little bit of recycled ideas, I think, but I love this idea of parity as it relates to containerization. And so they say you may encounter a variety of definitions of what parity is related to your development process, but in software development and testing is defined as the exact reproduction of the actual deployment environment across the delivery chain. And that's super important, not just so that you get good software, but that you get secure software and software with integrity, because it allows you to test it in a variety of different ways. And the article goes on to talk about you can spin up as many different versions of the application. You can spin up different parts of the application to handle testing better, not just perform better in production, but handle testing better. How many times have you, to put this in a real world example, run a web application test against a web application and completely borked the database because you clicked on stuff that deleted records or deleted users and all that stuff? In container, you can just rebuild it. It's fine. It's totally fine.
And the other thing is you can also create that separation between the application stack and the database and where it is. And this is one of those areas. I think we've been talking to the listeners of the show for a long time. Seriously, if you're not up on container security, if you're not up on cloud, if you're not up on Docker, you need to start catching up now. And it's almost like a completely different language. Like you were setting up Docker, I think it was a month ago, and you were kind of blown away on what you could actually do with it, right? And how it actually is set up. And that revolutionizes the way that we actually can do testing. Because you're right, we have customers that are like, here's our Docker repository, here's how you authenticate to them. And you can stand up our entire information, our entire infrastructure in your environment in like 5 commands.
Yeah.
That is ridiculous. That is awesome. That is one of the coolest things. It's like this virtualization has now gone to the nth degree, and that's great. But at the same time, no one knows how to test this stuff. So kind of tying this in, to kind of tie in with the idea of development and security is, Paul, we've done a number of webcasts on Security Weekly about pen test preparations. And one of those was pen test preparations for developers. If you're in charge of a web application and you expect to have a pen test, then here's a bunch of free tools that you can use right now to test your app before the testing company ever gets there to get that low-hanging fruit off the table as quickly as possible. And that's helpful. And that's great. And it's also an awareness component, right? It's an awareness component of a developer to learn about security attacks and the defenses. Now with Dockers, I'm just going to use Docker because everyone's using Docker. We see it everywhere. To tie into this story, a fantastic pen testing firm called Not So Secure out of the UK. They're one of the good ones, very good people at Not So Secure. They just released a vulnerable Docker VM. And you can download it and you can play with it. And it has all kinds of different vulnerabilities built into it. Docker misconfigurations, privilege escalations within a specific container. So it might not be a bad idea for your developers to actually sit down, pull down this vulnerable Docker VM from Not So Secure and walk through it. And look at what the vulnerabilities are, look at the configurations and how it's actually set up, and learn what these different vulnerabilities look like. Because right now, the automated scanning tools aren't doing a very good job at all at detecting these vulnerabilities whatsoever. And your developers, there's very little standards of what security in a Docker environment is supposed to look like at this moment. But there's a great virtual machine out there for your developers and your security team to play with that makes those mistakes. And you can actually run it. I think it has 2 modes. Easy and hard. Hard for you to know Docker skills and pen testing skills. It's kind of geared towards pen testers. But if you're standing up Docker, you really, really should stand up this vulnerable Docker instance from Not So Secure and play with it.
Not So Secure?
Not So Secure.
NotSoSecure.com?
Yep, NotSoSecure.com.
Got it.
/vulnerable-docker-VM. I'm kind of have issues.
Vulnerable
Docker-VM. There you go.
Yeah, page not found.
You probably misspelled vulnerable again.
I did. That's exactly. It's LN. Vulnerable. Yes.
Vulnerable.
So they put Docker on VMs. I got it. They put a container inside my VM. I got it. I heard you like containers, so I put a containers on your VM.
Inside your container, yo.
Yes. That's really cool, though. I like that. I'm glad to see efforts like this taking shape.
I'm going to say that they might run into problems. They actually shared it out via Drive, and I have experience with this. Google Drive gets angry sometimes whenever you have thousands of people downloading it. So what I'm saying is get there fast, everybody. So this is great. It's an opportunity for your developers to play with it and check out the pen test preparations webcast that Paul and I did. Paul, we probably need to update that webcast.
That's on our YouTube channel, and it probably does need some updating. I agree. Okay, with that, we're going to talk more about, we're going to transition into talking about developer security awareness training, kind of off the heels of talking about some of the newer technologies and how they impact security of your development environment. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.